Lights in the sky, disembodied voices, people being transported from one location to the other with no memory of it. What exactly was happening in the Massachusetts Bay Colony in the 1600s? So welcome to our channel on Strange Tides, and thank you so much to everybody who has subscribed over the past week or so. And if you haven't yet, don't forget to click that subscribe button below so that you don't miss what we have coming up. But for now, let's talk about what was going on in Boston. So a little bit of background. The Massachusetts Bay Colony was started by the Massachusetts Bay Company. So in 1629, a group of people, Puritans in fact, got a charter from the King of England that allowed them to come to the New World and basically start to conduct business. Unfortunately for the king, that charter said nothing about having to have the company stay in England. So this particular group picked up and everyone moved, the company and the people and everything came to the New World because they were searching for some religious freedom from the Church of England. Their leader and the guy that they eventually elected governor 12 times was a guy named John Winthrop. And John Winthrop is pretty famous for keeping journals from that time period. And in fact, a lot of what we know about New England in that time period comes from his journals. So in his journal on March 1st, 1639, he wrote this. I'm going to read it to you. It says, "In this year, one James Everell, a sober, discreet man, and two others saw a great light in the night at Muddy River. When it stood still, it flamed up, and it was about 3 yards square. When it ran, it was contracted into the figure of a swine. It ran as swift as an arrow towards Charlton, and so up and down about 2 or 3 hours. They were come down in their lighter about a mile, and when it was over, they found themselves carried quite back against the tide to the place they came from. Divers other credible persons saw the same light after about the same place." We'll talk about that in a minute, but first I'm going to read you pieces of what he wrote about 5 years later. So 5 years later, we find another reference to lights near Boston. And on January 18th, 1644, he wrote of 3 men coming to Boston by boat. It says they saw 2 lights arise out of the water near the north point of the town cove, in form like a man, and so to the south point, and there vanished away. A week later, more people saw the same type of lights that arose near Castle Island and moved to John Gallup's Point. He also writes of a light like the moon meeting and parting with the other light, sometimes shooting flames, sometimes shooting sparkles, and then it moves up over a hill and vanishes. At about the same time, multiple people heard a voice coming from the water in the harbor, and the voice said, "Boy, boy, come away, come away." All of the witnesses described the voice moving, so they say it kind of shoots back and forth about 20 times across great distances. And then a week later, this same voice was heard by more people, but on the other side of town towards a different island. So those are the accounts we have from John Winthrop's journals, but what is the explanation for all of these things? It's possible that these events were connected. It's possible that they were completely separate and 2 distinct events that had nothing to do with each other. A lot of people think that especially the first event is the first recorded instance of a UFO sighting in the New World. They cite the fact that it moved so fast. You know, they talk about it being as fast as arrows, bouncing back and forth in a span of about 2 miles. They also cite the fact that those 3 guys in the boat, they were watching these lights and drifting downstream, but then when the lights disappeared, they found themselves almost a mile back upstream, which should not have been able to happen. And they say that perhaps this was the first case of alien abduction that was recorded. Another theory is that the lights in both cases were ignis fatuus, which is, we know it is a spook light or swamp light or will-o'-the-wisp. Some evidence seems to point to that, especially when they talk about it looking like a flame and coming up out of the water, but we'll never know for sure. But the people in Boston actually thought it was the work of the devil, and the story that goes with that is kind of interesting because in the second case where they saw the lights in the harbor, that was the place where a few weeks earlier a ship had sunk, and the ship had sunk because one of the sailors got too close to the gunpowder stores with a torch. It exploded and killed multiple people. Where the devil bit comes in is that supposedly the sailor that lit the ship on fire had talked about being skilled in necromancy, and his body was the only one that was never recovered from that wreck. Also, the account mentions that he may have murdered his boss in Virginia and run from that, but the officials in Virginia didn't realize it until he was already dead. So, I don't know. I don't have a great explanation for what these lights are. If you've heard of another theory or you think you have something to add, please tell me in the comments, because without more information, I don't think we will ever know. Also, if you have an idea for another story, put that down there too, because I'm always looking for more ideas. So thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.